Coming up on this episode of Poker Jesus. We go three ways to a King 6-5, 2-club, 1-heart flop, the small blind checks, and the big blind pots for $120. Really, dude? Really? What are you possibly representing here? Hello and welcome to Lucky Vlog number 13. Midway through this episode, we have a special treat. Old Man Coffee makes an appearance, and he has some critiques for a number of popular poker vloggers. You're not going to want to miss it. And with that, let's get into it. We are five-handed, playing 5-10, and sitting on a stack of 3,000. All of our opponents have bought in for the minimum of 600, and the cutoff limps for $10. Next act, we look down at the Queen, Jack, Jack 5, double suited in spades and clubs. I'm fine with a raise here most of the time, as our hand will fare much better heads up than multi-way. Being double suited with a higher pair plus connectedness helps a lot in spots like that. However, I was anticipating one of the aggressive blinds to get squirrely, so I plan to back raise and just limp in. They don't bite, and we go four ways to a flop of 10-9-5 rainbow with one of each of my suit. When they check it over to us, we have the open-ended nut straight draw, an overpair, and two backdoor flush draws. Given no one has shown much interest, we should be able to take this down with a bet now, rather than let someone catch up, so we lead for the full pot of $40. If we had a hand like Queen Jack 8-7 here, giving us a monster wrap straight draw, I might bet a little less as I'd want to pull an opponent or two in, but in this spot I'm fine taking it down now. The small blind folds, but now the big blind check raises us to 160. The cutoff gets out of the way and it's back to us. We have to consider what hands our opponent would make this play with. Typically, it's going to be more weighted towards top two pair or a set rather than a straight draw, which is less likely given we hold a lot of the cards that make up the straight draws. If I give our opponent a hand like 10-10, 6-3 double suited in hearts and diamonds, then he's almost 62% equity against us. However, if we give him 10-9, 6-3 with those same suits, we're actually almost 58% equity against him. So either way, we expect we're in a roughly 60-40 spot, but we aren't sure if we're ahead or behind. Our opponent still has almost 400 behind after his raise, so I don't think we need to rip it here. We do have position on the button, and we can see the turn and decide from there as our opponent will be forced to act first. We make the call, and the pot is now $360. The turn comes the 3 of spades, and our opponent bets the pot. We've picked up additional outs as we can now make the spade flush. If our opponent has the top set here, we're about 40% equity. If he has top two pair, then we're a coin flip. Given we're getting 2-1 on our money here, we only need to have 33% equity for the call to be break even, which means even if our opponent turned top set face up, we'd still be making money in the long run calling here. So we get our stacks in, and he reveals the King 9-9-7 double suited in hearts and diamonds. We're a little worse off than we thought, as he holds one of the kings we need to make our hand. Still, we're around 38% equity, so it's a correct call given the price we're being laid. He only runs once, and the 5 of clubs gives us trips, but fills him up and he's going to double through. Still five-handed, playing 5-10, under the gun limps, and we're next to act holding ace, king, king, 8 suited in clubs to our ace. While the 8 being suited helps our hand, it doesn't connect with the other cards, which weakens our holding somewhat. Still, five-handed with a suited ace and a pair of kings, this is a raising candidate. We want to get this hand heads up with position on our opponent. We make it $45. Surprisingly, it's the big blind who calls our raise, and the under-the-gun limper folds. We go heads up to a Queen 10 deuce 2 spade flop in position, and our opponent checks it over to us. Given we have the king of spades and block many Broadway combos, plus we have position, we opt to bet the full pot of 105. You can mix in some smaller bets of half to 2/3 pot here as well. Our opponent calls. The turn is the 7 of spades, and our opponent once again checks to us. There's 315 in the pot. He only has 450 behind, though. We have more blockers to the straight draw than we do to the flush draw, so that makes our opponent more likely to have the flush draw in this spot, and we opt to slow down and check it back. The river is the 5 of spades, and our opponent once again checks. It's looking like they don't have the flush, as I'd expect them to try to get some value on the river with it. But at the same time, I don't think we can bet and represent the flush when we check back the turn, so it'll be hard to fold out hands that beat us. We check it back because we have decent showdown value, and our opponent reveals the Queen 8-7-6 suited in diamonds to his 8. I wouldn't even limp this hand on the button, and he's calling a raise with it out of position in the big blind. And then he flops top pair, no kicker, calls a pot-sized bet out of position, and just drills 2 pair on the turn. Why not? We put additional notes on this guy, as he's the type of player who's going to pay your mortgage every month. Now, 6-handed, there's an under-the-gun limp, and we look down at the ace, queen, 10-6 double-suited. Multiple gaps hurts this hand somewhat, but being double-suited with a nut suit and connectivity between the cards makes it playable, so we come along next to act. The cutoff raises it up to 55, and there's 2 callers to us. Being able to close the action, we make the call and take the flop 4 ways, which comes king, queen, 5 with 2 spades and 1 club. It checks over to us, and with the pre-flop raiser behind us, we opt to check it over and let him do the heavy lifting. He doesn't disappoint. He bets the full pot of $230, pretty much committing almost half his stack to the hand at this point. Both opponents fold, and action is on us. What can our opponent be betting for value in this spot? The only hands that make sense to me would be top set of kings, top 2 pair, or a straight draw that includes a weaker flush draw. I just don't buy that our opponent is all that strong. But even if he is, we have the nut flush draw, and we have straight draws, and if he wants to play, it'll be for all the money. We repot to $920, and he must have been bluffing because he lays it down. We limp under the gun with king, 7-6 suited in spades to our king. It folds to the small blind who completes, and then the big blind on a stack of roughly $650 makes it 40 to go. If the small blind was shorter stacked as well, I'd likely repot here. But since he has $2,000 and is still left to act, I opt to just call. We're going to have position on both opponents, but there's no need to get crazy just yet. We go 3 ways to a king 6-5, 2 club, 1 heart flop. The small blind checks and the big blind pots for $120. Really, dude? Really? What are you possibly representing here? We have top set, plus a flush blocker. And with a 6-7 in our hand, and you raising pre-flop out of position, it's far less likely you have any sort of straight draw. So the only hand that might make sense for our opponent to bet so big on this flop would be the nut flush draw, and not really much else. I guess you just really hate money. Well, let's see how much you hate money. We repot to $480, folding out the small blind. The big blind rips it in, and we make the easy call and find out we're up against queen, jack, deuce with the jack high flush draw. We're way ahead with close to 74% equity when the money goes in. Our opponent agrees to run it twice. The first run out is the 10 of hearts and the ace of diamonds, giving him a runner Broadway to win the first board. Suckadilla. The second run out comes the queen of spades and the jack of diamonds, and we at least hold on the second board to chop it up. Thanks for tuning in to Old Man Coffee's Coffee Corner. I haven't studied poker strategy in 40 years. Let's see what the kids are doing these days.
Next hand I have ace-8 of clubs in the cutoff. I make the raise.
We're not going to let the button steal our blind. That's rule number 1.
Caucasian male, age 25 to 60, puts in 28 big blinds with ace rag. This is an epidemic affecting our children.
We have ace-8 of clubs, and we're in the $10 straddle seat. It folds to D-Laz in the cutoff, who raises it to 40. Like throwing an extra 25.
This degenerate has ace rag out of position, and he's trying to re-raise with it. What is this world coming to?
7 of spades under the gun 1 to 1800.
We didn't give women the right to vote so that they could play poker. This isn't what the founding fathers wanted.
Just like, appreciate me shoving ace-5 suited here. Oh, there's the ace. There it is. Big double. That's how you win $66 tournaments.
Serves you right, Sonny.
No.
Poker is a 5-card game. That's why I always wait until the river to put all my chips in.
Gotta take a stand in this 88. Enough's enough.
You can say that again.
Raises to $35. The same player who had queens, maniac real estate agent calls, and I called.
Fuck, man. I fold.
Red flush is there?
How many times do you want to run it?
Once.
You got a flush?
Oh, yeah. You're first to show.
I need a jack. Yeah, I wanted to sour you there.
So this is how they play poker in communist Canada? It's a good thing they have free health care. They won't be able to afford much else playing like this.
Then we pick up ace-3 suited on the button. The cutoff raises to 30 with a short stack of 140. We'll have a somewhat wide range. I have good card removal. I 3-bet to 150.
Good card removal? Yeah, it's less likely there's another idiot in the hand holding ace rag.
Cutoff calls for 110 more. It turns out he's at the top of his range.
No shit, Sherlock!
Despite my opponent hitting a king, he's having a hard time coming to grips with the fact that he's won the pot.
Might have to dance with this ace-6 suited as well.
2 hands later, I'm in the hijack with ace-8 offsuit. Probably the worst ace that I open in this position, but I'm going to open it. So I make it 1,800. All right, so this next one is kind of a borderline open.
Borderline open? Is that the term you kids are using these days to describe a bad fucking play?
I have ace-3 offsuit on the button with something like 17 blinds. If I only had 15, I would rip this.
15 big blinds? Are you out of your fucking mind? Phil Hellmuth, the greatest tournament poker player in the history of the game, would wait till he has half a big blind before he risks it all in. You can't argue with the success, sweetie honey baby doll-faced toots. I talk like this because I'm old.
It doesn't play well post-flop, but you have a blocker to somebody having a calling hand behind you, so it's pretty easy shove if you have 15 blinds. When you have 20 blinds, it's borderline whether you play it, you can come in for a raise or a call. With 17, I think I just prefer to shove it. And it doesn't play well post-flop. I raised it to 6K. Not a fan of this. Don't try this at home.
This is why back in my day, women took care of the cooking, cleaning, and sewing. They're no good at math.
One of the first hands getting dealt in, I pick up ace-7 offsuit in the cutoff and raise it up to 2,700. In the first hand from Riddick, I pick up ace-5 of diamonds in the button, and this is just going to be an all-in at most stack depths. The low jack player raises to 16,000 on an 80,000 stack. Not much going on here, but this hand is too good to fold.
Ace rag is too good to fold? Sure, if you're a fucking idiot.
And definitely just gonna go all in. I jam, and this guy just shows pocket queens. Ends up rivering quads. The very next deal, I pick up ace-deuce offsuit, and for my tournament life, I just have to win this. I jam.
It's a lot of hours spent to be the bubble boy.
This draft-dodging hippie just can't help himself. The only draft he'd make is for the NFL, because he's so good at punting.
With ace-5 off, he raised button 26K. I think we could 3-bet, I'm not sure. We were off like 40 bigs at this point. Flop comes 7-3-2 rainbow. He bet 25K, we 3x it. He calls, but we check and then he bets like 40% and then we just fucking bail.
If you were my child, I'd write you out of the will. Oh, that's it. My heart, you sons of bitches, you've killed me. Martha, it's me, Pasquale. I'm coming home, sweetheart. I'm coming home.
7-handed, it folds to the button who limps, the small blind completes, and in the big blind with a junky King Jack 8-3 no suits, we check our option. The flop comes Queen 8-4 rainbow, and it's checked around. The turn is the King of Spades, putting 2 spades out and giving us 2 pair. The small blind leads out for $30 now, a pot-sized bet. He could be doing this with a variety of straight and flush draws that just materialized on the turn. He could have top 2 pair here, although he might have bet the flop if he hit the queen. We think our 2 pair may be good here, although there are a lot of cards on the river that complete draws that could put us in a tough spot. Still, I'm not ready to lay this down with position on my opponent, and I make the call. The button folds. The river is the king of clubs, giving us the second nuts, and the small blind continues with a pot-sized bet of $90. I don't think I can get value from hands we beat. If I raise, maybe if he has kings full of 4s, he calls, maybe. But we'll just be taking ourselves to value town when he shows up with a king-queen in the hole here, and there really isn't much he can call or raise with. So we just make the call, and he turns over the ace-8-7-6. So he turned a weak flush draw, and he decided to bet it, and when the river whiffed, he tried to apply max pressure with his pot-sized bluff. The table is full at 8 players, and it folds to the late position player. The hijack, cutoff, and button all limp along. We're in the small blind with the 7-4-3-3 suited in spades to our 4. This hand is terrible, and generally I think a fold is our best play. Given there's a bunch of opponents, though, that could mean the flop will favor a lower runout, if they are all tying up middle and high cards. We make a pretty speculative call and the big blind checks his option. We flop the absolute joint on an ace 2-5 2-club flop, but we have not much in the way of redraws. Also, not blocking any clubs, we want to wait until we see a safe turn card before we make this pot large, so we check it over. It checks to the hijack, who bets 50, and the button and myself come along. The turn is the 7 of clubs, completing the front door flush. We both check it over to the button, who bets the full pot of $200, and we lay it down. The hijack makes the call, leaving himself only around $300 left. The river is the 6 of spades, which doesn't really change anything. The hijack checks and the button continues with his aggression, and the hijack gives it up. Kind of an odd line to call off 40% of your stack out of position and then fold. Probably had something like aces and fives and was trying to pair the board there. A middle position player limps, and a solid player on the hijack raises it up to $45. The cutoff calls, and we're on the button with ace 9 6-4 suited in hearts to our ace. This is a marginal hand. The gaps between our cards make their connectiveness tenuous at best, but a suited ace deep stacked in position against the field is something I'm a fan of, and so we make the call. Both blinds come along, the limper lets it go, and we go 5 ways to a flop of 9-3-3 with 2 of our suit. It's checked over to the solid player, who bets the full pot of $235. The cutoff folds, and now the action's on us. This board is relatively safe looking for him if he has aces, although we know he doesn't have the ace of hearts. It's doubtful he has a 3 in his hand either, and with one of the 9s in our hand, there's only one combination of pocket 9s out there, and I don't think he has that either. With the nut flush draw, plus our range having pocket 9s more than our opponents, we take advantage of this situation, and we raise it up to 610. It's going to put a lot of pressure on our opponent if he holds just aces here, and we should be able to take this down a good chunk of the time. However, to our surprise, the big blind check raises both our asses, making it $2,300 and leaving himself only a grand behind. The original raiser gets out of the way, and we don't have much choice but to do the same. Our opponent at a minimum is going to have 3 of a kind here. He could have us drawing almost dead if he's full. Well, that's an easy way to torch over $600. Follow me for more life hacks. There's an under-the-gun limper, and it folds to us in the cutoff, holding 10-10, 8-6, double-suited in spades and clubs. You could raise to take control of the pot, potentially heads up with a well-disguised hand, allowing you to represent flops that you completely miss, but also bet flops you smash. And given the weakness of our flush draws, that may be prudent a good chunk of the time. However, with 2 aggressive players in the blinds, one sitting on close to $10,000, we really don't like bloating the pot too much with fairly speculative hands, even with position, and we opt to just call. This way, if it is raised, we'll feel comfortable making the call, rather than us raising and facing a really large re-raise. Both blinds come along, and we see a flop of 10-9-3 rainbow. It's checked over to us, and with top set and the straight blockers, we're going to start building this pot and bet $40. Only the huge stack in the big blind makes the call. The turn is the 3 of hearts, pairing the board and giving us the nut full house. He checks, and once again, we bet the full pot of $120. There's an extremely narrow range of value hands we'll show up with here, mostly 10s full or 9s full. Every other bet is going to be a bluff with draws that whiffed, so our bet will look bluffy to our opponent. He may try to wield that big stack and check raise us on what should be a card that isn't great for us a lot of the time. However, he just makes the call. We're hoping the straight comes in now, perhaps he's chasing it. The river is the king of hearts, completing the nut straight draw on the flop, plus the backdoor flush draw. If our opponent made the straight, it's doubtful they'll lay it down fearing a flush, because the flush came backdoored. Likewise, our full houses in this spot are relatively few and far between, so I'm going for full value here and bet the pot of $360. It'll look like a bet that doesn't want to call. Our opponent does make the call, and we scoop it. He winds up flashing pocket 9s in the hole. I'm actually really surprised at the amount of discipline he showed in this spot. If I'm bluffing or value betting a hand that's behind his, he doesn't want to discourage it. And the times he's getting coolered, like this one, he avoids taking himself to value town with middle set. I'm actually kind of disappointed I didn't get the full double up here. Do you guys play this any differently? Maybe check back the turn or make a smaller turn bet? We've arrived at the end of another episode. Thanks so much to all the popular poker vloggers out there who let me use their content. Be sure to check the description for links to all of their channels. Like them, subscribe them. They're great. I watch them all the time every week. And I hope everyone is having a great Memorial Day, and we'll see you in the next episode. And now a word from Vanessa K. Polk, semi-unretired heads-up legal expert.
You know, after watching a video like this, sometimes I'll like it, sometimes I'll leave a comment, and sometimes I'll subscribe. Sometimes I'll even do all three.